Coming to you live from Asteroid M, it's your favorite mutant masterminds, the Hateful Geeks. Tonight, we have our first interview. We're welcoming a good friend of ours, Keith, to the show. Keith is a lifelong comic book enthusiast, from being a fellow collector all the way up to every geek's dream and running his own comic book store. We're going to pick his brain, see what's great and mostly awful in the comic book world today and what it takes to stay afloat in the biz. All right, welcome back for the Hateful Geeks. I'm Phil.
This is Sweeney.
I'm Andy.
And this is Tim.
This week, we've got a special episode. Our boy Tim he's going to take the reins and he's going to lead a little interview with our new and special friend Keith, who our guest star today. Tim, take it away.
So I guess I'm going to start with the beginning, really, your time running Midgard Comics, and what made you decide, hey, I'm going to open up a comic book store?
All right. Introductions being what they are. I go by Keith Cretin, which is a Ramones reference. And rock and roll started everything for me, and it also is why I wound up with a comic shop in a weird way. There was a store called Castle Black, and the guy who was running it was a musician as well. And I used to buy comics from him, and I bought comics from Comic Town, and I bought comics from Tamarack Circle. It all depended on what store I could go to. So I split my pull-up because I was a comic junkie. I had to have my comics. So if I could only make it to Comic Connection, I got my Supermans. I had my Superman pull there, all the Superman books. Comic Town, I had all my X books there. And then Castle Black, I got a lot of indie stuff, and he got a lot of weird, like, goth stuff and things like that. So Castle Black was kind of struggling, and he wanted to get out of it, and he wanted to get back into playing music. Well, I had played music for years back in New England, and I still had all this equipment, a PA and all these amps, and they were just sitting there. I wasn't doing music anymore. And I was like, well, I'll trade you all this gear for comics. And he's like, cool. So I got a huge chunk of comics, and I started running trade shows on the side. I make a few extra bucks and, add to my collection. And then it was like, wow, I really kind of dig this. And he was out of it. He was just like, I don't want to have a store anymore. So long story short, I bought into his store, me and my wife at the time. He was our partner, and then we wound up buying him out. So it's kind of funny where, I got out of music and I got into comics. So then I did comics and I had the store, and gaming took off. So we had Magic, which was doing really well. We would do our Magic stuff on Saturdays. Comic Town did it on Fridays, so it was kind of a neat flow. We would do Friday, like the Friday night stuff. I had bands that would play in the area. So we ran music on Friday nights and Saturday nights. We ran our gaming during the day. We kind of flip-flop with other places that would do their gaming at night. And so that worked out. So I had a comic store and kind of a coffee house music venue, and I did that for a number of years. And it was great. But I guess the easiest way to explain why it stopped is I have a little girl who's special needs, and also ASCAP. I'm not sure if anyone knows about ASCAP in regards to the recording industry. I got interviewed by MTV, and all these Warped Tour bands played my venue and were saying all these great things about me. And, there's this great place. There's a comic shop, and all these kids go there. There's like 150 kids, and we play these great shows. Well, ASCAP took my entire interview and kind of came after me and said, hey, you're doing all this stuff. You owe us royalty money. You got to pay us because your kids are playing cover songs.
Oh, man.
So it was that. And then my insurance company caught wind of it and was like, you have insurance to have a place where kids are playing Pokemon and Magic, not to have 150 punk rock kids bouncing off the walls of a 1,500 square foot place. So my insurance changed. Unfortunate, though, because Dimebag Darrell, who passed away, he was the guy. He was the big telltale sign of how lucky I was that something crazy didn't happen there. I ran that for years and years. But that was it. I just had a love of comics. I collected comics. I loved music, and I love music, and it just kind of snowballed, and that's pretty much where it came from.
I've got a question because I remember being younger that Midgard had comic and you guys played music, and you had mentioned that bands were from like the Warped Tour. Do you remember any bands that played there? Because now I'm just curious.
Corporate played there. Bayside played there. Bouncing Souls. The Lazy American Workers, which is actually Beefcake of Guar. It's his side band. They played there. Hawthorne Heights, who were local, but they started playing at my place. There's tons because I would book anybody sight unseen. It was just like, sure, you can play my place. I don't care.
I was just more curious because when I was younger, for whatever reason that I don't remember, I couldn't get over there, or it was a bit of a slightly older crowd, so it was like a little intimidating. Now I'm just curious of like what bands I missed.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's all a blur. I did over 500 shows in the 3 years that we had the larger venue. We first started doing in the comic shop, which was fucking ridiculous. Excuse my French.
No, you're cool.
It was, in the comic picture, you go to Comic Town, they have gaming night, and there's a ton of people there. Instead of a ton of people like literally like playing cards on the comic boxes, picture like people standing on the comic boxes. You're like, because you had to cover them up, and there's it was not a wise thing.
It does sound pretty nuts, though, and of course, a great time. So now you're working at you're at World's Greatest Comics.
Yes.
And so what brought you back? Your Spidey
like
suits
the
in
mob.
the trash.
You can't. Comic books are the mob. You never ever escape. Jeff Patrick, the owner, he worked at the Comic Connection in Tamarack Circle.
Okay.
That's where I first met him. I moved here in 92, and I was getting my books there, and I met him, and we were on good friendly terms, et cetera, et cetera. And Jeff, he'd been doing trade shows for years and years and years and years. So I would see him at the shows, and like I said, when I started doing trade shows, I see Jeff there and everything else. When Midgard moved locations, we had a temporary location in Westerville before I kind of got out of things for a while. And Jeff was, for lack of a better term, I guess he was kind of like a silent partner. He didn't invest any money in it, but he paid rent for X amount of space in the store. And he would sell, basically, he would do, his setup like he does at a con. So his stuff was for sale while it was in storage. And we got a percentage of whatever sold. We kept track of it. We had a little book, this sold, hey, Adventure Comics, blah, 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 for X amount. And that worked out great because the toughest part of having any kind of a retail place is you got to spend X amount of money to fill your place with a whole bunch of stuff. And if it's not selling, then it's just kind of there. So we had a whole chunk of great old books and other stuff that was his in our store that we had nothing invested in. If it sold, we made some money. And it was great window dressing too, because, we always call that stuff kind of like, dust collectors. All those statues and all that stuff. Somebody might pay $200 for it, but if it's there, it's just kind of sitting there. So we focused on the new stuff, the new books, the polls, and he had all that. And that was just kind of a great relationship. But again, long story short there, my daughter, who is special needs, her needs got a little more pronounced, and my relationship at the time, it needed more attention. So I had to get basically, for I guess, a real job, you could say. I worked in fine dining my whole life. I'm a chef. I worked for a lot of great chefs. I was classically trained back east. I came out here, and then I worked for a bunch of shitty places just for work. So that's what I went and got back into, and kind of walked away from it for a while, as did Jeff. And then Jeff decided to open a store. He said, "Hey, I'm going to open a store. You think you can give me a hand?" And of course, he's a friend. I was like, "Well, sure." So I started helping him out part time. The best thing, and the thing I'm the most proud of in regards to all this babbling, he asked me to help him part time. So I'm helping him part time, And at this time, I am the kitchen manager at Sirens, the strip bar.
Okay.
Okay. There's some stories there, too. So I'm the kitchen manager at Sirens. I'm also the general manager of a Little Caesars, an assistant manager of another Little Caesars. I mean, I was working so many hours, it's ridiculous.
Right. I mean,
you
you
know,
sound like you're just all over the place.
And I was doing everything and anything I could at that point. And Jeff was like, I need a full-time employee. And it's like, you can't afford me. And he's just like, well, what do you need? What? And I flat out was just like, dude, this, no. And I'm not rolling in the dough. I am pretty thrifty, but he gives me a very good wage. I work my butt off for him, and I owe him everything in that regard because I get to do something that's really kind of groovy and still work in comics and everything else. But the testament of the fact is that we're a comic store, and he's able to pay me. We've been doing this for over 6 years. We don't do gaming. We have a small shop, and we focus on books. And, we get some action figures and a few things here and there, but it's just a testament of where the industry is going. I'm not saying there aren't a lot of hiccups, which we'll talk about as well, but it's just that fact. People are like, well, how? Well, we focus on comics. Every single day. It's tedious. I ain't gonna lie. There's a lot of grading and sorting and everything else, but that's the best thing is just the fact that I can say, hey, yeah, we're doing this all literally. Okay, I'm gonna brag. Today, before coming to the show, a guy dropped over 000 on back issues.
Oh man,
one guy.
That's crazy.
All Silver Age stuff going through. Looking. Hey, there's that Hulk annual with that Great Inhumans cover. It's a high grade. You're not going to find a better copy of that in this town, yada, yada, yada. Didn't blink. The guy's looking at it. He's known Jeff for years, and he knows how strict Jeff is. Jeff is probably one of the hottest graders. He should be working for CGC. They should pay him a consultation
like a commission or something like that.
The guy's grading is meticulous. People buy stuff off of him, send it off, and CGC gives it a higher grade because they're not as strict as he is in some cases because he's by the book. So and that's the best thing. So new books, old books, etc. But we do it all by selling comics.
Which I think, like in that regard of being strict, I think I appreciate that a bit more. Just for that, because I can just get that his opinion, and it's more reliable, I guess I should probably say.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate that like if somebody's taken a book out of the case and it's got $300 and something bucks or whatever, and it's not CGC'd or whatever, the guy's looking at it and whatever grade's on there, I have no problem. I'm just like, dude, you want to flip through. In most cases, they're like, oh crap, yes, this is this or this is that, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'm very proud of that. It's pretty cool.
It's because you've been in the industry for several years now.
I'm old. I turned 47 today, by the way. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thanks, Mom, for going through all that horrible childbirthing and stuff.
What experience and knowledge do you think is key in running a comic book store, and any customer service tips you might have?
Well, I think the key, it is customer service. If you look at you go to the reviews and people coming to the store and everything else, you got to be personable. You don't want to be a used car salesman and be all up in their shit and bother them and whatever. Say your hellos, give your spiel, interact with them a little bit. Comic people run the gambit. Some people aren't very social. Some are very socially awkward. Some are very, very chatty. You just kind of get a feel for it in that regards and kind of help them out in that and see, you look at them and you see, okay, what kind of shirt are they wearing? If they're wearing a specific superhero shirt, oh, you like this, you like that. And engage them in conversations and stuff. And then that way you can kind of steer them towards something. I've sold a bunch of stuff that, they're like, how the hell did you sell that? And it was just through a conversation where somebody brings up something and whatnot. And people want to feel like you give a rat's ass. one thing I can honestly say that bugs the hell out of me, and I've seen it hurt a lot of people, is if your own personal opinion clouds your judgment, you're not going to sell shit. I like what I like, but that's not everybody's cup of tea.
Right.
And, that's the case. I've seen that on a lot of cases where people say they've gone to a shop and they've literally been ridiculed for what they're buying, and which I think is kind of redunculous because, we can't send the stuff back. We bought it,
Right.
Like you're literally like telling a person not to spend money. Keeping an eye on trends is very important. Because we deal in books, we're constantly looking at what stuff is being hyped. We don't get any information as a store before the general public. Everybody hears the stuff. People come to us and be like, "Hey, did you hear this? You hear that?" And that is the key. Like you need to consistently follow trends, look at what's going on, and double check multiple different sites on the secondary market. Not only for what you have, because next thing you know, you got people in there scouring your back issues to buy something for $3. They're going to flip for $25 on the internet, but also to see what you might want to order in abundance of. It can be a crapshoot. We'll get into some of the other stuff with the hype in regards to new books, but I think the key element really there is that it is a 24-hour a day investment in your attention in pop culture of what's out there. Otherwise, you're screwed. You're going to be that guy like, oh, what? Well, why did I sell all these books for $3 that are now on eBay for $70? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, looking back at my time, like at Comic Town, that statement of like being 100% 24/7 into pop culture is as accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Between looking at upcoming solicitations or, like you said, in media, any character that might be popping up in a movie or a TV show,
Mm-hmm.
and that first appearance goes up. But I've lost my spot on my notes here. I'm sorry. I apologize. In my chicken scratch. So over the past, decade, we've become a digital culture.
Mm-hmm.
Piracy's out there with comic books, movies, TV shows. What are you guys doing at World's Greatest to kind of put your name out there and attract new readers and new customers?
To be honest with you, we don't do a shit ton in that regard. I mean, we've got Facebook and we've got a website and everything else, but comic books will probably be one of the last mediums to go away. Everybody talks about how, physicality of things, et cetera, but the Stan Lee quote of comics are like boobs. They're great to look on the internet, but there's nothing better than feeling a real one. I mean, it's attributed to Stan, whether or not he stole it from someone or not. But, any great comedian, most of their material is stolen. But that's a fact. I think there'll always be that aspect. And that's the kind of shop we are, is that we are a very physical shop where people are going. We've got bargain books. We've got high-end books. We've got investment grade books. But, in regards to any kind of digital medium or being out there in droves, it's not something really that we're super focused on.
Okay. Yeah.
We've, like I said, we get, you've got your website and everything else, but that's it.
I actually had something for you. You mentioned CGC, and I patron your shop, and I see the CGC graded books. What is your stance on slabbing a book?
Well, the beautiful thing now is that if you slab a book, you can still read it. There's a version of it out there for you to read. When I was a kid, I'll backtrack a bit. When I was a kid, I got in a fist fight with David Scully over Bring On the Bad Guys. It's a trade paperback that reprints the first appearances of a whole bunch of Marvel villains. And we got it out of the bookmobile. It's a thing from the library. They drive up to your school. I went to a private school, and they had all these. They had Son of the Origins of Marvel Comics, Bring On the Bad Guys, etc. And I wanted it. He wanted to take it out. And we started fighting and everything else. Back then, if you want to read that story, those are old stories then. Now there's so many different ways to read stuff. You can find it. It's out there. So getting a book slabbed it's not the heresy as that it would have been years ago. Like, you'll never read it. You can't read it, you know? So I don't have a problem with it. We try to explain CGC to people and explain comic books to people who don't understand the prices and why this is worth a lot of money. And the funny thing is that we use baseball cards as like the best analogy, and people understand it. Even people who don't collect ball cards know. It's like, well, think of it as your rookie card. The ones that are worth money are your rookie cards, your first appearances, first time an artist's on, or a writer, a big storyline, or whatever. Everything else is a common. So, yeah, you collect cards, but the big ones are your rookie cards. So what do you do with a rookie card? You're going to make sure it's pristine. You're going to have it in the collector's thing and everything else. So, I don't have a problem with it. What I do have a problem with, though, is, as I said, my boss, Jeff, is one of the most meticulous graders that I've ever met. You've got all these different people grading these books, and you'll see kind of a varied stance on what their grading principles are. You almost wonder if it's some guy there, it's his last 20 minutes of his shift, and he's like, 9-2, that's a 9-2. Screw, that's a 7. Now, another Sleepwalker #1, this is a 7. I don't care what it is. I'm going to send that back and say, yeah, that's... And you hear stories, and there's, conspiracy stories about people flipping books and switching books that get sent and everything else. So there's that. So it's a little rough. But in the long run, I mean, because they're barcoded and they're scanned and they're all part of a database, it is kind of neat. You can look and see what a 9.8, book has sold for over X amount, because these are all the 9.8s, and these are the ones that are out there and stuff. You're going to get that hardcore into collecting. That's pretty cool. So,
speaking of like CGC not CGC, I'm sorry. But people coming in and trying to sell their books, whatnot. Is there anything that's come across in the store that you're like, oh, I might, that catches my eye? Is it whether it be Amazing Fantasy 15 or like X-Men #1?
Oh, like something I want, or just like holy shit kind of thing?
Holy shit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you the holy shit story. And this again is me. Hey, Jeff, I'm not asking for a raise, and I'm not saying all these nice things because I want one. This is a true story. Again, this is making my boss sound like a fucking comic book saint, but I swear on my daughter Sarah on this. Guy came in with a box, musty old box of comic books. 99% of the comic books were coverless. Smelled like a barn. Was in a barn, probably. Guy said that he did, he bought furniture and stuff like that, Amish furniture, and this was in something, or blah, 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 blah. Going through the books, some of the ones that had covers were cool books. There's a beat up copy of Superboy, first Bizarro appearance was in there, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going through and I'm like, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. And then Jeff comes from the back and I'm like, well, there's the owner. He's the man. So Jeff starts going through the books. And I swear on my daughter, all of a sudden they are staring me in the face. Is an Amazing Fantasy 15. At least a 5 or better. Just from being at least about 5-6 away. Because he's like, oh, and I'm like, holy crap, You almost hear like the choir of angels.
Hey, Keith, for some of our listeners who aren't familiar with Amazing Fantasy 15, kind of give us the skinny on that, if you would.
All right. Well, like I talked about with first appearances and baseball cards and rookie cards, Amazing Fantasy 15, if you're a Marvel collector, is one of the monster rookie cards, super high exalted things. That is the first appearance of Spider-Man. The last issue of Amazing Fantasy 15, which was a comics that had a whole bunch of different stories in each issue, science fiction, fantasy, etc. The last issue 15, had the cover feature of Spider-Man and had his origin. People liked the story so much, they gave him his own book. Even a crapped out, beat up copy of that book that it looks like someone used it as a bath mat is worth way too much money. And so this book, so I'm looking at the first Spider-Man ever, and this guy knows nothing about comics. Nothing at all, openly. Now, I ain't gonna lie. punk rock guy that I am. I've been homeless. I've done enough drugs to kill a rhino back in my stupid days. I've done a lot of horrible things. That little devil on my shoulder came back for a minute and was like, dude, have I got a plan for you? Luckily, I don't have that against my soul and karma and everything else because I wasn't the one holding the book. My boss, Jeff, was. My boss, Jeff, then goes and explains to this gentleman exactly what he has in detail. Offers him a very sizable amount of money for the book, as well as some of the other. There were a bunch of other key books in there besides that first Bazaar. I forget what else was in there. The Bazaar one only sticks in my head because I'm a Superman collector, so that one I remember. But Jeff told him, and he sold us a bunch of the other books, but he decided to keep the AF-15 because he thought it was really, really super cool. He wasn't like, I'm going to take this and turn around and resell it. He was like, no, I think I really want to keep this. Wow, that's really neat. I didn't know. So that was one of the moments where I was just like, holy crap. That's what that is. You know, I can't believe it.
It's one of the holy grails, like in my hand.
Yeah. My store, Midgard Comics, that I had years ago, is named Midgard, which is the Norse term for Earth, because one of the books I got years ago, selling my PA system and everything else, was I had a Journey into Mystery 83, which is the first appearance of Thor. So I had that for years, framed, hanging in Midgard. Breaks my heart that I sold it, but I sold it for the right reasons. You know, it's. I tell people it's like I've owned every key Marvel book with the exception of Amazing Fantasy 15. I've owned it at least once. It's been in my collection. I've had a FF1. I've had a Spidey 1. You know, I've had a Tales of Suspense 39. I've had everything but that damn AF-15, which I don't think that's ever going to happen unless I win the lottery or something crazy.
Or you could beat up the guy to your left.
Don't hate me. I have a copy.
Well, that's it. That's awesome. I'm glad to do. But yeah, it was a gorgeous looking copy.
Mine was given to me by my dad, and I'm always hesitant on getting it graded because I'm just always worried that something is going to damage it somehow. I don't know. I'm super paranoid about stuff like that.
Well, I'd be paranoid too because I've heard stories where people have sent books off, and I hate to say it, but you know, they're like, I sent this book off, and I'm pretty darn sure the book I got back isn't my book, or it got damaged in the transit and blah 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 blah. Well, not even the mail. I mean, they're human. I don't care how meticulous you are. You're flipping through paper that's 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, depending on your book, and some guy, hey, John, what? Next thing you know, especially if it's a family heirloom, I there's no way in hell I'd let somebody touch that.
He gave me.
Where do you live again?
Not too far away from your store, actually. So my next question would be, any business practices that Marvel or DC, Image, Diamond, even that we can that you can rant on that you would change. The strip cover returns that Marvel does, everything about Diamond.
All right. Well, for the people who listen to this cast, I assume they know a little bit of comic books, but the one thing a lot of people still don't realize is comic stores, we get our comics from one lone distributor. One. Two, there's too much time. I couldn't go into the whole full spiel as to why this happened, but the be all end all is a whole bunch of crazy shit happened in the 90s, and there used to be tons of different distributors you'd get your comic books from, and now there's one standing. And they were very smart. What they did was, even though they had no competition, they had Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, and Image sign exclusive deals that they would only go through them, even though there's nobody else to go through. Nobody was even waiting in the wings. They're just like, you only do business with us. So if I won $1 jillion and I wanted to distribute comic books, I'd have to build a company, get warehouses, and then I'd have to take them to court over a monopoly before I could even sell anything.
Right.
So, that's my lead into this, is that there's a lot of practices with Diamond that I disagree with, but unfortunately it boils down to their customer service is, oh, I hear you, but I really don't seem to care because I don't have to.
Right.
Damages, the way the books are packed, they say, oh, we're not, these aren't collectibles, but the box, their company itself says that they are, the epicenter of collecting or some such nonsense. You'll have people packing these books, they're all bent up and everything else. And so you're constantly getting your orders in. So I would have to say pretty much it starts from the top, where if you're going to have a business that is built on a collector's mentality, the amount of care in the packing and the amount of care of how you treat your employees so that they will pack said materials better needs to be better. In regards to shipping and everything else, they just go through UPS. And if anyone's watched UPS, and this is every shipping place, this end up doesn't mean anything. It just means that's the way you should throw it. And it's paper products. Boxes will get soaking wet, and even though they're multi-packed, you'll see sometimes stuff will soak through boxes. I could go on and on. It just boils down to that one simple fact that they don't really have to care any more than they are doing.
I mean, when you're the only game in town,
right? They don't have anything. Why should I? You can go and bitch and yell and cry, but when it's all said and done, it doesn't matter. You can't take your business elsewhere,
right?
Now, Marvel and DC, if you want to just talk about industry stuff, we go back to the 90s, and I'm seeing a lot of the stuff that, almost tanked the industry, they're going back to. And I don't know if it's like that mentality of a lover where the sex was amazing once, and you keep going back thinking it's going to be great again, but keep forgetting how horrible a person they were. It's like, I came 27 times, but you know what? She, torched my car and ran up all my credit cards and et cetera,
all my clothes are in the front yard.
Yeah, it's horrible. The variant covers, where you have to order X amount to get a specific variant. That's neat for what it's worth, but I mean, I just look at it, and a lot of times it's almost lackluster. And the themes that they utilize in some cases too are rather asinine, where you're just kind of staring at it and you're going, why did you, who thought that was a good idea? Like, some of it, I believe in different artistic styles, don't get me wrong, but there's some stuff where, style or not, it's crap. I'm like, this is somebody had to order 25 copies to get this cover, and this is the cover that you think is viable.
To get just one of these.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. Marvel right now and DC both are doing what are called lenticular covers. To make that kind of the layman's term, it's almost like a motion cover, where you kind of move it one way and you'll see an image, you move it another way and it's another image. DC's been doing really well with it, because what they've done is they've taken an existing image, and the secondary image is what it morphs into. So it's primarily the same thing with the same logo. So it's a motion cover. Marvel, on the other hand, it's two separate images, and they're using a homage to an old cover from back in the day over a new existing cover. And the problem with that is it's two different logos. So even though it's the Falcon #1, if you look at it a different way and it's sitting on the shelf, it's Iron Man something or other. The Iceman, latest issue of Iceman was a Champions cover, even though there is a Champions comic. Why they didn't just Champions, even though Iceman was in the Champions, I guess. So I sort of understand what they're shooting for, but you would think, looking at it and you're saying on a marketing standpoint, this is too damn confusing. Because when somebody's looking at the shelf, okay, I see Iron Man there. Well, that's not Iron Man, it's the Falcon.
Right.
And if they're stuck in mid-phase where you don't get the full image, it's just a garbled mess.
Yeah, I've heard that online, where it's staying in that middle form that you're talking about, and people are just like, what is this?
What is it? And The other thing is the ordering plateau for that is you had to order X amount of the regular cover before you could even order the lenticular cover. So first you had to over-order on the regular covers, then you were able to order the other ones. Now, that being the case, collectors come in and they're like, okay, I want the lenticular. I'm going to buy these lenticulars, but I don't give a rat's behind about the regular covers. So you spent X amount of money on these other ones. Best example of that is tomorrow's Incredible Hulk, for us, I should say. Originally, Totally Awesome Hulk. Our subscriptions for that were relatively low. But what they did is they said, to order this, your order needs to be X amount % of this book from this past ordering period. Well, there was a crossover they did with the X books primarily, where they introduced a Hulk Wolverine hybrid, and it was called Weapons of Mutant Destruction. So we ordered very heavy on that issue of Totally Awesome Hulk, even though we didn't have a lot of subscribers for it. And it sold well, not because Totally Awesome Hulk sells, but it sold well because it tied into a couple other books. So your orders on it were based on Old Man Logan / Wolverine and Weapon X, which is all the Wolverine-esque mutant characters. So that order number for us was ridiculous. It was way more than we usually order. So to get the lenticulars, we had to order a stupid amount of books. Well, my boss is like, this is Marvel's big initiative to get back to basics, and we're going to bring back some of the classic characters, and they made a big point of it. And he's like, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. And we're sitting on a ton of product. Now, again, we're our store. That's us. Does that reflect on other stores? Well, I'll give you the skinny there. There's a thing called final order cutoff that from your days.
Yeah.
Well, after the first week of these lenticulars, when final order cutoff hit for all the other books that we over-ordered so that we could get the lenticulars, they had an astronomical amount of stores hacking their numbers to bits.
I'm sure.
I mean, just like, no, I don't want that. No. So, we're committed to what we've ordered, but they've slashed and slashed and slashed. So, it's tiresome that instead of, I want to promote a good storyline and I want to promote, this event, and in so doing, it's all based on some sort of hyped secondary marketing nonsense. And that's what happened to the 90s. They're overprinting stuff, and people were, making extra copies of BS things with, crazy holographic covers and shiny covers and this and that and everything else. Instead of, give me a good story. Just, make the story good. And, again, not to sit there and spout and say, okay, DC versus Marvel, but DC's Rebirth, people were very skeptical. I was. I'm a huge Superman fan. I stopped reading Superman during New 52. I stopped reading Cold. I've been reading Superman since Christopher Reeve era Superman. And it made me read Superman again. And I cared about the characters, and I cared about this crazy storyline with Dr. Manhattan and all this subplot that was going on. And now with Batman, there's, they've got the Dark Knight's Metal storyline, which again, they have crazy covers and everything else, but the storyline's damn good. Even if they didn't have the cockamamie covers, we'd still be selling the books well. So I just wish that would be more of the thing that people were talking about was the story and not necessarily the wrappings of, this is, the cover is this, and we're going to go with this and whatever. And maybe also the talent. I remember back in the day, as you probably back in the day working at Comic Town, where every given Wednesday there was all this talent you're talking about. I can't believe this guy's on this book, or this guy's writing this book, or this person's drawing this book. Now it's not about that. It's all about some sort of event and not necessarily about the talent.
Right. Like, I mean, even as short as, let's say 6-7 years ago, Marvel had, Bendis, but along with Fraction, Hickman, Jason Aaron, they've gone on and, done their own thing. And you're right with I think Marvel's been concerned about setting up the next story
Mhm.
and not letting it be.
Everything's about the next event.
Right.
Everything's an event. Here's the next event. This is, this happened, and this is going to set up. We're going to set this up so that we now have this other 8 or 10 issues series of this and this and this and this and this and this. Whereas, instead of caring about the characters, you're just constantly like, this is going to change the status quo of the Marvel universe again. And you're like, well,
Even though, because between, I see, I can't even remember what was before Secret Empire. What was before Secret Empire?
Civil War 2.
Civil War 2. Civil War 2 was what? Yeah, it was what, 5 months in between?
Yeah.
It's just, that's my Marvel gripe, and I apologize for going off on that tangent. But speaking of publishers, Aftershock is a newer one that's been coming out the past couple of years.
Aftershock, I have to say, is their product line is amazing. Just in essence of the stories, that's the thing, is that there's so many different genres being brought. There's fantasy, there's horror, there's noir, there's crime drama. I mean, you name it. But I think the best thing was how they approached the industry and how they continue to do so. Joe Pruitt, who writes Black Eyed Kids, Paul Jenkins, who wrote Origin for Marvel, and he wrote Spider-Man for years and years, et cetera, et cetera. They went on a tour and went and signed in all the bunch of shops and everything else. And they were asking questions like, okay, how is this selling? Why is this selling? Why isn't this selling? Not just their own company, but in regards to the industry. Their rep, Lisa Wu, she kind of did the first strike and went around, and she came and she was very interested in what we thought of their product and what we could do to help sell it. And, she knew about the books and talked about the books and talked about the industry. That's not something you see. You don't see it. It's, they put out their books and there you go. It was almost like 60s Marvel bullpen-esque, where, here they were and you look and they're posting stuff on the internet and and they're on a tour still. They go to all these different comic shops and do signings and talk about stuff. And it's just kind of refreshing to see that kind of love for the industry. You can tell they love doing it. They're like, watching a band go on tour, and you can see some bands that are just like, I've done this a million times and I don't really give a rat's ass. And then some bands are like, well, they're having the time of their life and they're talking to the fans, and they go to their merch table and they sign all their CDs and their records, and they're hanging out, and they're not jumping on the bus and driving off. And it's probably, in my opinion, the first time I've seen anything like that since, the days of like the Chaos Comics guys,
right?
Who would do that kind of stuff.
And we're talking 20 years, ish,
where it's amazing. Alters, one of the books that Aftershock does. Great little kind of backstory to that is that was actually a pitch that Paul Jenkins gave to Marvel.
Really?
Marvel didn't want to have anything to do with it because they didn't want new characters being created, basically, is what it boiled down to. They're like, now, because it was all new characters. But if you read the book, you can see where it was, they're altered humans, there's your mutants. You have a very powerful, evil mutant, if you will, an alter, who basically is like, if you exhibit altered superhuman abilities, you come, work for me, be subservient to me, or I'm going to kill you. So you've got your Magneto-esque guy, you've got your X-Men / Xavier type crew. But, and again, this is, Jenkins writes from his own experiences and things that have kind of grabbed him in his interest. Like, a lot of the different characters in the book Alters are people from different walks of life who have different challenges, who now all of a sudden have a mutant ability. And so you have a central character, you have a central plot, but then he gets to play around with some social commentary. Here's a homeless person who gets superhuman powers. Do they utilize them basically just to say, screw you, I'm going to steal food, I'm going to do this? What makes a hero? Do powers make a hero?
Right. Do you use these for your own selfish benefits, or help the homeless, help people who've been in your situation before, who are in your situation?
The main character has a handicapped brother. The parental units are as dysfunctional as all get out. The main character itself is actually a transgender. So in the superhuman identity, it is the person's real identity. It's male, but feels they are a woman. So it's kind of wild where they actually have three identities, because it's a young person literally trying to come to terms with the fact they're a transgender, and then a coming out experience where, okay, now they have superpowers, but as a superpowered person, they feel the most comfortable in the identity they feel they truly are. So in a weird way, as a superhuman person, the main character is not hiding at all.
Right.
And this is stuff, again, that he pitched back, and they're like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And he gave a lot of reasons. He was very diplomatic when he talked about his dealings with Marvel, but that was the key of, well, okay, they didn't want any new characters created. So this was an idea that he sat on, and, he's like, well, I really want to do this. Dark Arc is another series they're doing, which is amazing. I went to Catholic school. I don't practice or anything anymore, but I did have to study the Bible and all that nonsense.
Same right here.
I was an alcoholic in 4th grade because they didn't lock up the wine. They thought I had a learning disability. It took them 2 years to realize I was just a drunk. But whole premise is basically Noah built the ark. Well, all of the fantasy creatures, good and bad, were instructed by supernatural beings of higher power, told the sorcerer, look, you need to do the same thing. So there's this dark ark filled with, manticores and dragons and unicorns and demons and everything else. It's pretty wild. It's definitely pretty wild.
That does sound real good, because I looked at their lineup, because I'm behind on comics, unfortunately, right now, and that did look interesting. I bought and downloaded the first issue of Jimmy's Bastards. Because I'm a huge James Bond fan, and I read that premise where he's got children and they're all coming to get him. I'm just like, yeah, all right, that's real good.
Yeah, that's Jimmy's Bastards is great. Black Eyed Kids, if you like horror, that is just an amazing horror book too. I could go on and on. You look up the site; they've got a little something for everybody. And the best thing is there's just a neat twist on every genre, where you're reading it and you're just like, wow, this is And I think it comes from the fact that, again, the company is just saying, hey, talent, do what you want, get it out there. Let's kind of stir the pot a little bit, because things are a bit stale in some cases, and there's a lot of good indie stuff. And I think also too, just the fact that we sold Aftershock, we sold the comics, we did all right by them, but now it's kind of here I am talking about it. We're selling more because I'm excited. They were so excited, they got me excited. It's like a friend coming to you talking about a band that they loved, and you're like, yeah, I heard a single, it was all right. And they're like, no,
listen to the whole album.
Yeah, and they're so excited, and you're like, you kind of get into it more, and so there you go.
And you are also self-publishing your own indie book.
Yep.
Rock and Roll Splendor. Yeah,
I have a zine called Keith Cretin's Rock and Roll Splendor. It is as underground and indie as it goes. I self-publish. I print them myself at Kinko's late at night, drinking a gallon of energy drinks and chain smoking, and pissing off the dude late night. I just print them myself, black and white, staple them. The nicest compliment I ever got was that it was akin to Harvey Pekar of American Splendor, hence the title. If he was in a punk band when he was a kid. Some of the stories are autobiographical. And then some of them, unlike Harvey's books, are fictitious. where I fight space aliens and monsters and all that kind of stuff. I work with a lot of incredibly talented people. I'm primarily a cartoonist. I've done some of the stuff myself, but I'm more kind of like Calvin and Hobbes on crack. So, if I do anything, it's more the humor aspect. But, like Daryl Banks, who did Green Lantern for years. My friend Sean Durnan, who's a local tattoo artist and graphic artist. He's doing stuff. Michael Nino is a customer at my shop and long-term local comic artist. He does his own stuff. He's been doing his own stuff for years and years and years. He's been working on things with me, so it's kind of neat. I just work with a whole bunch of people, and I kind of come up with some crazy stories, do some layouts, and work with people on various finishes, and print them up, and then I sell them at open mics. I play guitar and sing and do a solo act, and then I'm in a band. So I sell them at bars and stuff. I don't sell them in the shop. If somebody asks me, I have them sometimes on me. But I was telling folks here earlier before the recording, I don't like selling them in the store because it's kind of like a pity sale. And I don't want people to think like if they don't buy my comic that, I'm going to screw up their pull and they're not going to get their, Uncanny Avengers or something. So.
And then Andy will sell his soul for anything.
Yeah.
You can't hear him, but he's nodding his head yes.
I will nod.
There we go.
I'm going to put all of our podcasts on CD and I'm going to go stand on a street corner. And
you nerd.
Good luck
sell
being
them at
poor.
Good luck being poor.
So nothing will change.
Yeah, right. Well, those are all the questions that I've got for you. Is there anything else you wanted to?
Well, I want to ask, what made you guys decide you wanted to do a podcast? So now I'm going to flip this around. So,
the four of us.
Okay, it's like, you're all friends are hanging out. Like somebody had to be like, you know what? We should just like start like going in.
We need a reason to keep hanging out.
That's pretty much literally what it was, of just us kind of, bullshitting on Fridays. And I can't remember if it was Andy or Phil. I know it wasn't me.
I was sitting at home.
Yeah.
And I actually got into it because I sit at a desk 8-9 hours a day and I stare at computer monitors. And luckily I'm not on the phones, so I could listen to music. So I started getting into listening to podcasts. What really got me into it is I love Game of Thrones.
Okay.
So I was like, I want more. So I looked up Game of Thrones podcast. And then while I'm going through and looking at podcasts, I was like, holy shit, there is a podcast for everything. So I started listening to Kevin Smith. I'm a big Kevin Smith fan. I like his take on comics, pop culture, and stuff like that. So I started listening. He has a podcast called Fat Man on Batman. And his started exactly like this. It was interviews. He was interviewing Paul Dini. He was interviewing Mark Hamill. He was interviewing Neil Adams. So these were all people that I was like, I want to hear what they have to say. So I'm like, podcasts are really cool. And the cool part is all these schmucks sitting around doing it, we do the exact same thing. Every Friday night, me, Sweeney, Phil, and Tim would hang out. And I was like, we sit here and talk about all kinds of the same shit that everyone else is. Why can't we sit down and do this?
Well, there's a convention coming to town. There's flyers at the shop. I believe, however, it's Thanksgiving weekend.
Yep.
So here's the deal. When you stop in tomorrow, you get your pull, whatever, take a look at the flyers. Tables there are cheap as hell. And I won't be there for the whole con, but I was thinking about actually paying for a table, and then my buddy Mike is going to be there. If you guys want, I'll pay for half the table. If you guys, and it'll be there. If you guys actually want to run your podcast from the con, it's here in town. It's like the convention center, not the big convention center. I figure I'll show you the flyer for
What's the name of the con? Do you know?
God. Oh, here I am recording. The guy who is doing it is Mass Media Comics. Jeff knows him, and he just really wanted to do like a comic convention, like Mid-Ohio Con before it got bought out. It's like you're not going to have media guests or anything else. It's just straight comics. It's just a comic
Yeah,
show.
like the Buckeye Comic Con.
Yeah. But on a larger scale.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you guys want, the table will be there. So if, I'll find out if electricity is available, yada, yada, yada.
What's
you guys
all
could
that,
set
yeah.
up and you guys could literally do it from there if you want, because the table would be already set.
We were looking into that for Horror Hound, which is in November. And we actually got the response back to buy a table. we weren't quite ready yet. And on top of that, I know somebody who's a vendor there. And the Columbus show is significantly smaller than their Cincinnati and Indianapolis shows. So their vendor space is really limited. And I didn't want to be those guys that were sitting there not set. Like, this is not our living. And some vendors, that is their living.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't want to be that
me, I know.
asshole like,
Right.
hey, we took your spot and we're sitting here talking about bullshit.
Right.
Like, eventually I'd like to get there.
Here's that DX crotch shop again.
Yeah.
We're just kind of still building things right now. I mean, we're definitely looking to hit the con scenes, but you know, like Andy was saying, this isn't our main source of bread and butter. We got to put food on the table, and I mean, you know how that is. It's just
without a doubt.
Yeah.
we gotta pay the bills, and when the bills get paid, and maybe 6 months, 7 months, we'll probably be at a spot where we can be like, "Yo, boss, I'm taking off because I gotta be famous." but for now, no, I think I like where we are. This is something fun. It's like Andy was saying, like this is something that all of us are just really passionate about. I mean, we figured we were spending every Friday night just getting just straight shit-faced in front of each other talking about movies and comic books. I got a film degree.
Yeah, everybody's got beers around me but me, which is really strange for me. Well,
That's
he's got
how-
an energy
No,
drink, and I've got an energy drink.
I've
All
got
right.
Mountain Dew.
All right, there
So,
you
I
go.
mean,
I don't feel too bad.
Andy and I have been talking about doing something like we were talking about, like, you know, website for a while, like talking about like a movie review blog, shit like that. But I mean, this just made sense because, you know, none of us are pretty, so let's just do a radio show.
So
Voice for podcast.
you mentioned Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your favorite, like well known, like the icons? So you got your Superman, your Batman, your Spider-Man. Is that your number one?
Yeah. All right. This is where I gush. Okay. Everybody has certain things. I've been a horrible kid my entire life. My dad is career military. My dad's fucking amazing. And, you know, I've had multicolored hair and played in crazy punk bands, and he always supported me. When I know darn well, my dad's my dad. And he's like, well, at least I got the other son, you know? But one of my fondest memories is literally, you know, watching the old 1950s Supermans with my dad and seeing the Christopher Reeve Superman, et cetera, et cetera. And my father was the one, we were just talking about superheroes, and I loved comics when I was a kid, and I just loved Superman. I had the Mego 1970s Superman action figures and everything else. But
that was a weird noise.
I still have it on my art table and whatnot. But you know, I always have fights with people about, you know, Superman and Batman. Batman's better than Superman, and blah 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 blah. And we get in these fights.
Blasphemers.
And I always bring up one fact. I said the opinion of a character is one thing, but the reason why I always stand by Superman as the greatest hero is that he has no reason to be a hero. Is that, you know, Batman is flawed because he's doing it for his own selfish reason. He was hurt, and he's on this mission that'll never get. He'll never be done because he's always having to somehow make up for the fact that he couldn't save his parents, etc. Superman comes here. He's got all these powers, etc., etc. He doesn't need to work. He doesn't need to do jack shit. He's gorgeous as a guy goes. I mean, straight as hell. But let's face it, he's Superman. You know, he could do anything he wanted to do. He doesn't need to help people. And he does. I mean, he could just fly around and bang hot island broads and, you know, go to casinos and blow tons of money and squeeze coal into diamonds and have more money and whatever. He doesn't have to do it. And why does he do it? And it's that nature versus nurture kind of, you know, that debate. So he was brought up that way, is that he was told that if you have gifts, if you have something special about you, you should do something to help the world be a better place and try. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the most perfect individual in the world, but do something to make it better. Well, when you have that amount of powers, I mean, you can do how much can't he do, for Christ's sake? Whereas Batman, that's the thing. It's always he's trying to make up for the fact of his lost parents and that he couldn't protect them and everything else. He has a reason. Superman has no reason at all. I mean, he has no reason. So, you know, I've always loved that aspect of it. And I've watched, you know, my father, who is, you know, been just amazing. My parents are just amazing people. and everything they sacrificed for my brother and my sister. And I just watch that and see like, wow, I wish more people had that mentality of why a hero is a hero and why you do what you got to do. Tim, you talk about you have an amazing fantasy 15. Well, I don't have an amazing fantasy 15, but as Superman goes, I do have 3 things that I'll probably get buried with. 1, I have a head sketch of Superman, and it is autographed by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
Oh.
I also have Christopher Reeve's one of his books that is signed by his wife for him. Literally, she signed it for Chris. So when he went on a book tour, she was with him. She's no longer with us. She died of cancer, unfortunately. So I have that. But in regards to Christopher Reeve, I have every autograph from Superman, and it's all on one framed piece with photos. So I have a Gene Hackman, I have a Jackie Cooper,
That's nuts.
I have a Marlon Brando, I have a Christopher Reeve, I have a Margot Kidder, Ned Beatty. I have them all. The Marlon Brando is actually a letter to his nephew. It's folded so the autograph is visible the way it's all matted and professionally framed. But if you look real close, you can see where it says to nephew. I bought it at an auction because Marlon Brando never signed autographs.
Right.
That was like his gig. It's the only way you get a Brando autograph is you get like a canceled check or something personal.
Or yeah.
So that's my that's the one thing that I had for years and years and years. In regards to Superman stuff. So yeah, I've never, I'll never have any of the key super old books per se, but I have that, which is, my big deal. So, in regards to gushing about Superman, that's pretty much it.
Keith, I just want to thank you from one like hardcore Superman fan to another. I've finally been able to win a Superman versus Batman argument without opening my mouth. And
I am a Batman fan. Like,
Yeah.
I like Batman. However, like Phil and I will tease each other about, who's better, Superman or Batman? Superman or Batman? To me, they are the world's finest.
Oh yeah, I mean,
like,
the team is
with
what
Superman
it is, yeah.
and Batman. Like to me, they are DC's flagship, and they are for a reason. They are the night and the dark. They're so opposite of each other.
Wait. They're
but
the night and the dark. They're the night
day
and the dark.
The night. Yes, the day and the night. They are the night and dark.
He's not the drinking one. That's the best part right there.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah. Well, all right. To make it feel even worse, though, I have a head sketch of the Joker and the Penguin by Bob Kane, and it's also signed by Cesar Romero and Burgess Meredith.
Holy shit.
Where do you live?
He's going to see 4 dudes show up with ski masks.
And here I thought I was
voices.
all excited when I got that Batman 227. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that
Neil Adams is my favorite Batman artist just because of the nostalgia's sake. That's what I remember from late 70s, early 80s.
Oh yeah, I love when me and I have my good friend Richard Bridgewater. Him and I grew up together. He's 2 days older than me, literally 2 days. And his mom and dad left the hospital room, met my mom and dad, and I swear to God, 2 years later, never see each other again. 2 years later, they wound up buying houses next door to each other. I swear. Seriously, I swear to God. When him and I were kids, we would be on the teeter-totter, and we would play Batman and Robin. And that was like the Batmobile. Be like, quick to the Batmobile. And we'd go, and we'd slide down the side thing and run over and jump and, swing back and forth. And, we would watch the 60s Batman on Channel 25 out of Boston, and those. So yeah, I love I love Batman too. Don't get me wrong. In fact, when he signs birthday cards to me, like today was my birthday, I got a birthday card from him, and he signs everything to Cal. And whenever I sign anything, I always sign it to Bruce to him. It's just one of those things we've always done. So I don't knock Batman. I love Batman too. Just Superman's more my deal. So.
I'm right there with you. And I love the Batman too. I give the Batman a hard time only because I love the Batman so much. I know enough about him to fuck with him. But yeah, for me, it's always been like Superman represents this like unattainable like ideal of altruism that's just not really humanly possible, but something to strive for. It's something that we as people should all want to better ourselves. And I like you said, he's got no reason to do it. And I love that. I've never actually used that argument, but I'm stealing that. Thank you.
No,
it's a testament to Pa Kent.
Yeah, well, exactly. That that line literally in the Christopher Reeve film when he's like, "Look, you're here for a reason, and it's not to score touchdowns." And that's the most telling statement right there. Of like, look, you got to ask yourself, why am I doing this, and what kind of an impact am I going to make? We were discussing the Dark Knight trilogy, however, and I will stand by the fact that I think they're great movies, but they're not Batman movies. I'm going to say that on record, so people can fight me on it. But they're not Batman. They're Dark Avenger movies, but I never felt like I was watching Batman. And I'll give you two big reasons. One, he was never a detective. Everybody did everything for him. Bruce Wayne was supposed to be like the Dark Knight detective. Everybody was like, hey, by the way, you should know this, or blah, blah, blah. And the other thing that really bothered me is that he was handed everything by Lucius Fox. It was like, here's this great contraption. Here's this great contraption. I think it should have been more a give and take, that Bruce was more involved in these things, because he's supposed to be, literally super intelligent. And I just never got that. It was just, just a whole lot of, I'm going to wait till something happens, and then I'm going to beat it up. And that was, so it was great Dark Avenger movies, and phenomenally shot and everything. I think the Joker, that rendition of the Joker is, for that style of movie, is amazing. But I just never felt where I was sitting there. When I saw Batman when I was a kid and I saw Michael Keaton, I felt like, wow, this is cool. I'm watching a Batman movie. It was, I understood this is this new rendition in Tim Burton's version, but I felt like, wow, I don't know. I just never felt like I was watching a Batman movie. And so
I kind of agree with you. I don't think Batman's detective nature has ever really been represented on film properly until Batfleck, because I really feel like in Dawn of Justice, that Batman is he's performing reconnaissance. He's doing detective work and like discovering shit, which is a really refreshing take on the Batman to finally see that.
And I love the Dark Knight. Like you were saying, like that Joker to me, like I grew up with the Keaton Batman. So I was like, how are you ever going to top? To me, they're not even comparable. They're two unique Jokers. I loved the Dark Knight Joker.
I was can't surf as good as Cesar Romero.
I was in the same boat. I'm like, he doesn't do a lot of his own detective work. So I liked when they kind of showed it the one and only time in the Dark Knight, when he pulls the bullet fragment out of the wall and reverse engineers it to find the fingerprint on it. So I was like, okay, they're showing that he has that skill. I wish they'd shown more of it. Right. But I still enjoy it.
No, I don't not enjoy them, like I said, but that was the thing. Because I'm like, there's something missing. I mean, Alfred, again, I think Kane's a great actor, but Alfred was never supposed to be like a Cockney. I thought more like a Roger Moore type person should have been. I liked how they interacted. I liked their relationship, but the delivery was off, and that kind of was one of the things that I was like, so it kind of got me there.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah. I like Michael Caine as Alfred, but that being said, I think Jeremy Irons is pretty great too.
Yeah. I like Michael Caine, but only when surrounded by Muppets.
Or Jaws. You see Jaws 4.
Or Jaws, yep. Oh man, God, that movie's so bad.
The Revenge in Jamaica. It's a terrible Jaws movie.
Oh God.
So Keith, getting to know you a little bit, man. You're like punk rock. You like music. You reminded me of a book I read, of a short sixer miniseries from 2012. I just want to know if you've read it or not, and I'd love to hear your opinion. It's called Punk Rock Jesus.
Yeah, actually, it was mandatory reading when it came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a Vertigo Comics book with Sean Murphy.
It is amazing. They literally, they say that they have Jesus' DNA, and they artificially impregnate a virgin, and they put it on TV, and it is a TV series. To be watched, and through the whole experience, his benefactor and protector is a former terrorist Irish, either terrorist or revolutionary, depending on how you look at them. But the book's amazing. It's totally amazing.
Yeah, it's one that I want to reread because it's been out of print. And I think they recently brought it back.
Yeah, there's a couple of books that it's funny that people ask me, like, what do you think you should read? And I'll bring it up, and then like it's out of print. Like there's a book back in the day called Teenagers from Mars. And it's about these just this punk rock teenage kid and a whole crazy series of events that happen. And it's like a Tarantino movie with teenage kids. That's the only way I can explain it. In the end, they literally, it's an escalation of events, and the main character and his punk rock girlfriend are chased by the cops, and they're wanted by all of the law enforcement in their area, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. 6 issues of just insane comic reading, and it hasn't been in print forever. The other thing is Weapon Brown. Not sure if any of you ever heard of Weapon Brown. Weapon Brown, there used to be a book called Deep Fried. It was an anthology. And some of the stuff was really questionable in regards to its humor. But thing in there was he took inspiration from Charlie Brown and Peanuts. And it was take Charlie Brown and merge him with kind of a cybernetic mercenary. Snoopy is a pit bull. It's an apocalyptic wasteland. Linus is the cult leader of the Church of the Great Pumpkin, which is this pumpkin-headed Cthulhu thing. Peppermint Patty and Marcy are in it, and they're obviously lesbians. But there's a caterpillar monster, much like the Dune worms, that has Garfield's face on it. There's all these classic like comic strip characters are used. Well, he did all these great series, and then it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then he did it online, I think, and whatnot. Well, he compiled it, and the book's about the size of a phone book. It's huge. And when we had it at World's Greatest, we sold like 25 copies of this. It's black and white. It's the size of a phone book. It's just totally eclectic and weird. So 25 copies of a trade like that is really wild. And it's out of print. But if you see people try selling it for ridiculous amounts of money, and I keep contacting the guy, like, you need to put this back in print because it's, look it up. It's called Weapon Brown. It's amazingly, ridiculously awesome. So I think aside from like the milk and cheese era stuff, I don't think I've seen anything more ridiculous.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, you talking about that made me instantly just go like, yeah, okay, I need to track this down.
Yeah, it's I highly recommend it. I can.
Is there anything else you would? What's in your like must read? Anything else?
Well, like I said, Pimpin' the Aftershock stuff. That's totally the big must reads for me. Is a lot of the stuff that they're doing now. I read a lot of oddball stuff, to be honest with you. I like a lot of pulp stuff. Like they're doing like the Batman Shadow crossovers, which are a lot of fun. I love the Shadow. I love the Green Hornet. I'm a big Spirit fan. A lot of that kind of stuff I just really dig from that pulpy kind of aspect of characters and whatnot.
I think I saw you also, you guys mentioned Swamp Thing. That's going to be coming in January.
I'm a huge Swamp Thing fan, always have been. And, Len Wein, who passed away, the co-creator, it's the last story that he's involved in. It was that he was working on. So the I guess it's a holiday special, if you will. That'll be out. So there'll definitely be something I'm kind of forcing on people, like, hey, read this. Trying to think if there's anything that really jumps out that is just kind of blown me away, with the exception of, like I said, there's a handful of things here and there, but I just go back a lot. I find myself backtracking when it comes to a lot of, I'm glad I got my Superman back. I guess that's it. If I have to say it, is, with Rebirth, they gave me my Superman. I really like the aspect of him being with Lois again. I love Super Sons. That's a lot of fun. I think the nicest thing I've heard someone say, and I've swiped it all the time in regards to it's kind of like Stand By Me with capes. I think that was a great analogy in regards to how that works. But I think when it comes right down to it, really, I'm just happy the industry is still doing well. I can bitch about so many different things, but on the flip side, comic sales are up, not just because of the variant covers. And interest is up. And even though we have clunkers like the Inhumans, we won't go there. We don't think we have enough time for that. But there's something out there for everybody. And I think that's really the key right there. So.
All right. Well, I'm gonna shill World's Greatest real quick. World's Greatest Comics. It's 5992 Westerville Road here, Westerville, Ohio, the corner of Dempsey Road and Westerville. They're open from Monday through Saturday, 12 to 7, and closed on Sundays?
Yes, we're closed on Sundays primarily just so that we have one day, or a lot of those one-day shows are Sunday shows. And
Right.
I can't brag about this. Then the best thing about our place is that it smells like fresh baked bread because we're right next to Subway. So, most times you go in and comic stores kind of smell like, butt. But
Like comic conventions.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's kind of wild. It's like, wow, this place is actually orderly and it doesn't smell like ass. That's nice. So,
Right. Well, I know real quick before we go, I know you said you have you sometimes perform Ace of Cups and stuff. Any of your shows coming up?
the next time I will be playing will be at the Tree Bar on December the 15th, and that's Keith Cretin. That's me solo. And so I'll be doing some acoustic stuff, and then some friends of mine who I jam with, we might wind up doing some full band stuff here and there. Joey 74, the band I'm in, we're not performing that night. Ironically enough, it's Joey's drummer, Freddie. It's his birthday bash, so we always have a crazy effed up show on his birthday. So he might back me up on that. There's a great bunch of local bands that'll be hitting us up there, and actually, I'm sorry. It's at the Dark Horse Tavern. We moved it. That's right. So it's not going to be at the Tree Bar. It's a Dark Horse Tavern. So,
all right.
We've had it at the Tree Bar like past couple of years. I kind of spaced it. So yeah, there. If you don't hit me up and I don't have books on me, I'll have comics on me. I have a solo record that I've got out. I'm working on my second solo record, so that stuff will be out there too. But none of it's about comic books. I can tell you that. There's most of it's either about my crazy life or the Ramones. So there you go.
All right. Phil,
Well, Keith-
Andy, Sweeney, or
Keith, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
No, thanks for having me, man.
We are all
I bathed
massive
and everything. I thought I was going to be on video, so I'm all pretty, like trying to look hot for all the nerdy
Oh, I'm
comic
looking at Twitter,
girls
buddy.
and
You're on
stuff,
video.
So, but now I'm like, I should have just not bathed today.
right.
we're all massive comic book fans. All of us grew up with it. And just being able to get your insight and somebody who's been there in the industry is just really invaluable to us, man. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your life with us. And I'm hoping you get a little bit more traffic in the store. I've been in there. It's an impressive collection you guys got, and I think you guys got some good days ahead of you, man.
Yeah, we're 6 years and we're still going strong. So we actually need a bigger store. I mean, that's the main thing. So I
was going to vouch for
hopefully.
you. So surprisingly, there are quite a few comic book shops in the greater Columbus area. And I getting back into collecting. So I told you the story. I collected as a youngster and into the 90s. And then in the 90s, when the variants and the foil covers and everything just started to run amok, and when Image came along and printed millions of all their number one issues, I finally got out of it. And I was also going right into my college years. So I sold it all for like beer money.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm getting back into it, I started to go into these stores to be like, hey, I want to get back in. And you and Jeff were, like you said, you knew what you were talking about. You didn't pressure. And the selection there is always amazing. So anybody listening, if you're local, World's Greatest.
Yeah, come on down. And I think the one thing we'll end on this. standing in World's Greatest, I tell people, literally within 8 minutes of standing in that store, 8-minute drive from that store's location, in the 90s, there were over 30 comic book stores. If you looked in the phone book, I mean, you know, back in the day, there was over 30 comic stores within 8-minute drive. It was redunculous how many stores were out there. So, you know, there's, you know, we've got some shops in town, but it's not like it was. And all of the shops now, what I think is amazing is 99.9% of the shops, I'll say that, I'm all super cool with, Jeff's super cool with. And it's great because we have this great relationship. Gib over at the Ogre, you know, Ryan over at Comic Town, you know, Tony over, you know, Capital City. I'll get a call from Comic Town. Somebody will call me, and, you know, hey, this is so-and-so. We don't have this. Do you have this? You know, back in the 90s when I had my shop, that's not how it was per se. There was a handful of shops that we were friendly with, a handful. But it was very predatory and very standoffish. But everybody's super cool. Gib got screwed by Diamond on some stuff. Hey, you know, do you have these for my pull customer? I'm short. Yeah, that's cool. You know, Tony, I know your orders on this are kind of low. Do you need a couple of these? Hey, I wasn't able to get these books, or they came damaged, and now Diamond won't replace them. I'm amazed at how well we all play well, because we all have our own niches. The folks at Pack Rat, I've known them for years. Same thing, you know, they do more stuff with, you know, some like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or things of that nature. You know, so you call them, hey, do you have this? Because we don't do anything gaming wise, you know. And that's the best part. I can say that, you know, 99.9% of the shops, that's it. There's none of that bullshit that you think like, oh, you know, they're the competition, you know. My boss says it best. I'm not here to put anyone out of business. I'm just here to do business. And that's, and every single time, and Gib has said this too, he coined the phrase that every single time a comic shop goes under, it hurts us all. And I firmly believe that, because that destroys the faith in the comic buying community that, you know, why do I want to get involved in this hobby if one given day I'm going to walk up and the doors are going to be closed and now I can't get my books, and where am I going to get them? You know, and so that's it. I have to say, yeah, I talk funny still after being here for 20 years. But I love the Columbus comic community, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. So,
we're glad to have you here, man.
You know, so.
Well, that's been a really eventful first interview. I think I've learned a lot. How about you guys?
Yeah, no, I learned a lot.
Oh yeah, we'll have to have you back on for a little follow up, maybe after Legacy gets its
we'll
legs
see.
going. We'll see how it does. But I agree with you. Rebirth right now set the bar.
Yes, it did.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks again for tuning in to the Hateful Geeks with our guest host Keith. My name's Phil.
This is Sweeney.
I'm Andy.
And this is Tim.
And we're the Hateful Geeks. Deuces.
Later.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good,
It
though.
could have been a lot better.
I didn't really like it.
It was pretty terrible.
It was bad.
It was awful.
It was terrible.
Get him away!
Hey, boo!
Boo!
Cold in a trail.
Right. Is it cool if I'm just
Here
sitting on here?
we'll go.
Okay.
We're in a
'Cause I
nerd
love
sandwich
you
now.
Too much, baby.
Keeping that part in, by the way.
You should.
Yeah, have you ever seen Dread Zeppelin?
No.
Look them up. They're amazing. They do Led Zeppelin covers reggae, but their lead singer is an Elvis impersonator.
You ever heard of Richard
Oh,
Cheese?
Jesus Christ. Sounds unreal.
Richard Cheese? Yes, actually I have.
Hey, he's the shit.
Yes.
Get
If
up,
you want,
come on, get down with the sickness. You
Yeah.
fucker, get up.
Real quick.
Madness is the
How do I
gift
keep
that has
count
been
on it?
given to me.
edit all,
Yes,
all the
sir.
references from the gentleman to my right over here in regards to
Butt fucking.
Yeah, I was not going to say it, so it's recorded. Now they're like, we have them saying butt fucking recorded. They're great. Thanks.
Hey, we are an explicit podcast. You do not need to censor yourself at all.
All right.
Okay. And you can hear us fine, right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.